I'm Stacey Lindis from Podcast PD, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Thursday. I know, guys, sometimes my schedule goes a little off, and, it's usually Wednesdays and Saturdays. But you know what? I am one of those that when the opportunity comes about and we can get some great guests, we will make it happen because we definitely want to bring you the best as always. And tonight is definitely like every other night with an amazing guest that we have here today. He is an educator. He is a podcaster as well. And today he's going to share his experience in teaching. And you may be asking yourself, well, you already have a lot of educators and you've had people on. Well, I just want to let you know that Hunter, this is his third year teaching. So he's fresh, I guess you would say, into the classroom and so on. But don't let that fool you. Today we're going to learn what it's like and what it has been like for Hunter as he has moved into the classroom. We're going to know what inspired him to move into the classroom. And of course, we're definitely going to be talking about some of the podcasting that he does and just lessons learned, guys, because this is a time where us as educators, it's important that we learn from one another. And if there's anything that we can do or help with and that you can learn from us, or at least from our mistakes, so you don't make those, that's what we're here for. So Hunter, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. Hunter, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing amazing. I was just telling you, well, first of all, thank you for the kind introduction. I just need to pocket that in like a bottle and have you introduce me every single period of every single day. I think my students and I would love that. So if I can sign you up for that, that would be great.
Hey, you know what? We'll work on that. I'll record that soundbite and then you can pop it on there.
There we go. I would love that. My students would love that too. No, I'm doing great. For mid-November, it's really easy to be negative. I was telling you a little bit before the podcast. It's just like, oh man, it's starting to get cold here in Iowa. A little bit less sunshine outside. You wake up, it's dark. You go home, it's dark. And so it's really easy to just sort of get negative over the little things. And today was just an awesome day. And I felt like the kids were feeding off my positive energy, and I really felt that. So things are going well. How about yourself?
Excellent. Well, doing great. I mean, we're getting ready for break. Like I mentioned to you, a little bit in the warm-up chat, we are going to get a whole week off. So it'll be a nice week to just kind of relax, disconnect, kind of recharge your batteries. And then we've got 3 more weeks of work, and then we're off for Christmas break for 2 weeks. And then after that, January on, it seems like it's just going to fly right by. And I mean, it has been a whirlwind of a year. And, of course, with so many things going on, but you know what, like you said, you do have your good days, you do have your bad days, but it's all in the attitude that you bring in. And I know you posted about that, earlier today, social media, and talking about that. And we'll get into that too. But if you can, Hunter, for our listeners that are watching today, that are getting to know you for the first time, those that will be watching later or listening to the episode later, give us a little brief introduction, about who you are, where you're from, and your context in education. And if you can, please add one little interesting thing about yourself that people may not know.
All right. So I'll start with the interesting thing because it sort of ties into my story. So I'm a triplet, but I have 2 sisters. So that's like my icebreaker for all time. It's like, oh, what's one interesting thing about you? Or what's the, for the icebreaker activity every teacher ever had you do, all throughout elementary school. But yeah, so I'm a triplet. I've got 2 sisters. They're amazing. But neither of them went into education, and both my parents were educators. And so I was forced to, obviously. But in all reality, my parents, my mom was a retired principal. She was a longtime teacher before that. And my dad is still currently teaching at the same school he started at. He's teaching middle school science for the 6th grade level. And so growing up, sitting at the dinner table, listening to their stories about this kid and that kid, or the awesome assembly where they got pie in their face because kids don't, fundraise enough money. Just all of those stories growing up really inspired me to have that same impact and want to have that same impact on kids. So education was really never in my, I never could imagine myself doing anything else. So it's sort of like a boring story, but I've always wanted to be an educator, and here I am, third year teaching 7th grade science in the Des Moines area. And I'm absolutely loving it. So.
Oh man, that is wonderful. That is amazing. And I think you, like you said, I think you do win the icebreaker. You are the king of the icebreakers, as with that fun fact about yourself, stating that you are a triplet. I would have never known. It took me by surprise too. And I was like, that is definitely a great and interesting fact. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And for all our audience members joining us right now, I know Mel is here. Mel is joining us from Colombia. So she says, good evening, not long time no see. But Mel is always a great supporter of the show. So thank you so much for joining us, Mel, all the way from Colombia via Australia. So yeah, so that's something that is wonderful. So I'm excited about that. So Hunter, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit more about your education journey. Now, you said, you 2 other siblings, they didn't become educators, parent educator, so tell us a little bit about that. Was it really, really something that you said, yeah, this is what I want to do, I want to be? Or did you have that one moment where you had that one teacher that said, hey, you know what, that's what I want to be? Or of course, I mean, you had your dad. So what really just said, you know what, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to go after?
That's a good question. I think it back to a lot of the teachers I know, and it wasn't like when I was a kid, I always wanted to play school. I just really enjoyed my schooling experience. And I think as, in addition to the parental stories and them role modeling me, for me rather, and just getting throughout, into classrooms in high school. So I was able to do some field experiences. It was a process of reaffirmation. I always knew I wanted to go into education, but there were checks along the way. So my parents would constantly check me. They're like, are you sure? It's really hard. Are you sure you want to do this? I said, yeah, I want to do it. And, get to my high school field experience, do 150 hours in a 4th grade classroom and in a middle school. Okay, you made it through this. I think you might be able to do this. Get into college. And, you just kind of go from there. And the more field experiences I had, just the more confident I felt in myself to go into education and really try and make a difference. And the big thing too was seeing my parents at the dinner table. Like I said, there were so many positives, but my mom was a principal at a high school that had a lot of issues. And there's a lot of negative sides too to education. And so seeing them come home and seeing the things that are out of their control that they were trying to fight and trying to fix and fight against really instilled in me a passion to try and make a difference. I always wanted to feel like I can make a change, that education could be different. When my parents retire, school will not look the same. And so I think that's partially what's driving me still. Is just seeing that other side of education that's really, really tough to fix and change. But that's why we do podcasts like this, so we can learn from the best, so we can share ideas, collaborate, because we know the change is possible. But it takes things like this to make that happen.
No, and I absolutely agree with you. And you know what? It's very interesting, that you did have your parents at home where you constantly heard, obviously the upside of this, why they do their why. They're sharing their why with you. And that definitely pumps you up. But the fact that, you saw them, in the most vulnerable state too, when things weren't going so well. And, things were tough, but the fact that you say, you know what, this is what I want to do and inspire that change. I think it was very similar to the conversation that we had when I was thinking about you know what, this is what I want to do. And yes, I definitely want to go into leadership because of change. We want to make that change because we can always see what can be done differently, or just one little tweak can make a huge difference. Just like you posted, you had a not so great day, and then all of a sudden, the next day you come in and boom, it was you were just balling. The class was awesome. You had some great lessons, you had some great interactions, and that's the way it goes. But we're chasing that change. We want to make a difference, and I absolutely agree with you. Making those connections has definitely been a wonderful, wonderful way to learn from the best and take those things, sprinkle them on into our practice, and cook up something great that we can serve up to others. So yeah, for sure. That's wonderful. That really excites me. And we've got Amanda here. Amanda, yo, from welcome. Cali. What's up, friends? Hey, Mel. Hey, Fonz. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. Amanda, also, if you haven't connected with her, Hunter, definitely connect with her. Amanda is just amazing. She's an amazing tech coach. She just wealth of knowledge too, as well. And also just a great supporter of the show. So thank you so much,
Definitely.
Amanda, for joining us here today. So Hunter, okay, so you've got teacher parents, administrator. Now you're going into your third year of teaching. And so you're currently teaching middle school, you said, correct?
Correct. I'm teaching 7th grade science. I do a lot of different things as well. I serve on the building leadership team. What's up, Amanda? Serve on the building leadership team. I'm a mentor teacher, which is a new role as well. So normally that's first year teachers, but in my case, it's I serve 4 other teachers within my school and just supporting them and their needs, kind of connecting them to our professional learning community. We call it Cluster within our school. So that's taken up a lot of my time, and it's given me a lot of insight into the challenges teachers face, but also so many of just being able to be in classrooms has been so much fun for me this year. Especially starting my career during COVID. My first year of teaching was right when that pandemic hit. And so the idea of getting into other people's classrooms was really tough because we were in classrooms and then completely out of school. We were at home teaching online, and then it was hybrid. And, so that got in the way of actually seeing other awesome teachers do what they do. So in addition to my building leadership team role, I'm also a mentor teacher and teach 7th grade science. So
excellent. Well, we've got Josh Tovar also who's joining us, and he is a principal, Garland ISD. And
welcome, Josh.
I don't know, Hunter, if you're familiar with Josh. Josh does some amazing work too, as well, with Unlock the Middle. He definitely is a huge advocate of the principal's chair. He definitely has a great vision for principals, great leader also as well. So I highly recommend you give him a follow. But Hunter, let's talk a little bit about mentoring. You see,
sure.
Currently right now I'm taking a course, and it's mentoring and professional development. So I want to ask you, your first year, were you assigned a mentor? I hope you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So I had 2. So I had a first year teacher mentor and an actual mentor teacher that would meet with me weekly. So it was nice to have 2 people sort of supporting me. So
let's talk a little bit about that. How helpful was it to have that the first year? I mean, just having not 1, but 2 people that can kind of help you as you're transitioning into your first year of teaching. Give us a little bit of insight on that, and the difference that it did make, and maybe think about the difference that it could have made if you didn't have a mentor.
Absolutely. Coming out of college, you think you've got it all figured out. You're like, yeah, I aced all these education classes. I'm going to rock it. And lo and behold, every teacher out there knows first year teaching is really hard. And so having 2 mentors in my life was so helpful. And it was like angels had come down onto earth and had been like, Hunter, you need this. You need someone who can help you plan curriculum, and you need someone who can help you fix behaviors. Here is Kathy Meidel. Here is Shannon Moling. These 2 people will just save you and help you. And so it was really nice because I would go to one for all my science curriculum, all the standards work, standards alignment, long-term planning lessons and units, and she's brilliant at it. And so that saved me in that area. And then having Shannon be that person I could talk to about, I'm really struggling with this kid today. How could, what have you done in the past? What are the strategies you use? And just really problem solve with her when I'm struggling with classroom management, with handling a specific behavior issue, or seeing those things over time. And also for both of them to come in and say, hey, you're not crazy. Just to say, hey, you're doing a really good job. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. And here are all the good things that you're doing. Here's some things for you to consider. And I think the key to mentoring, any good mentor walks alongside you. They don't try to force feed you answers. Oftentimes the best educators have the answers already. They just need the right questions to be asked to them so they can say it out loud, right? So having those 2 come in my room pretty frequently, they ask me such great questions to really get me to think about my own practice and get me to the answers that they probably already knew, but they allowed me to discover it on my own.
And I think that is so great that your school or your district, has such a great induction, program as far as for first year teachers. And I think that is something that is vital. And, when I first became a teacher, coming in from the private sector and coming in without even going to the College of Education or everything, it was through alternative certification, but came in, I don't recall even being assigned a mentor at all whatsoever. However, the teacher right across the hall just really took me up under her wing, and she was like, "Oh yeah, do this, try that." And then all of a sudden I met another gentleman within the department who was actually about 2 buildings away from me, because our schools, like at that time, I mean, they were just expanding, but he would just kind of walk by and I would teach with my door open and just very methodically walk by and just kind of give a glance, and I can kind of see him through my peripheral vision, and I was intimidated because I was like, "Oh my goodness, am I messing up? Am I doing something wrong?" And I remember getting the feedback from him, and he's like, "You know what, Alfonso?" He goes, "If you keep doing what you're doing," he goes, "man, these years are going to fly by. You're doing a good job. Just keep at it." And, just to have that reassurance from somebody and just to have somebody take you up under their wing is something that is so important. Because, I mean, let's not sugarcoat this, but sometimes you're assigned somebody that really doesn't want to do it. And they're just kind of like, okay, I guess, and get the stipend, but they have really like offered no help at all whatsoever. And that could be very detrimental, in for somebody who's a first year teacher to not have somebody that is really there for them to help them, with those questions, like you said, like, hey, how about some strategies for classroom management, or, what are some ways that I can present the curriculum and so on. And I think that that is so important. And even more so now with so many teachers, we want to make sure that they feel welcome. We want to make sure that they stay and that they have a wonderful experience and that we build relationships with them. So I think that's great.
And I got lucky too, because, my student teaching experience, I had one amazing cooperating teacher who set me up to teach really well. He was a science teacher in the Des Moines area, and the way he taught, it was more lecture style, but the kids were so engaged because he was such a great orator, and he always had hands-on activities for them to do. And just like seeing him being in his flow constantly, and really like the dialogue that he would say, like so well thought out, every single word had purpose. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want to be. But that was after my not so great 5th grade experience, where I was with a teacher who, ripped things out of kids' hands, would just berate kids in front of me. And I physically just, you get that knot in your stomach where you're just like, this is not right. And you just kind of have to walk away because you're the student teacher. What else can you do? Like, and so it was nice because when she left for a couple months, I could just go on in and do my thing. So that was really nice. But, unfortunately, if I didn't have parents as educators who were there to remind me like, hey, this is what it's really like, this is going to be good for you to see what it's not like, reassuring me, I think my going into my first year of teaching would have been a lot more different had I not had that foundation sort of predestined for me, because it was kind of a nightmare. And I feel like a lot of teachers end up having that, but they don't have the extra support systems to say, hey, what you're going through is not normal. You're going to be fine though. Like, it's going to be okay. Like you said, that affirmation is so important.
Yeah, it truly is. And just building those relationships. And I'm glad, like, just having those 2 mentors there, building those relationships, just having somebody there is definitely very important. So Hunter, let me ask you something. I mean, considering you did have, or you were able to get experience or hear the experiences from both your parents, what is, and I want to ask this, what is something you wish you knew, something you wish you knew before you started teaching? I mean, you went through the motions, you went through the College of Ed, you aced your exams, you did all of this, but now you are in the classroom. What is the first thing that comes to mind that you're like, man, I wish I would have known this?
Oh man, how much time do we have? Oh my goodness, Alfonso, you're making me think. There's so many ways I could. Okay, the first one that comes to my mind is, how on earth do you manage your classroom? And what does that truly look like through the lens of relationship building? Not just being nice to kids, because a lot of people are nice to kids and a lot of people like kids, but how do you use those relationships with a purpose? How do you systemically create that for every single kid? I didn't know how to do that, and I'm still working on it, but I didn't really know what I was doing until I had Shannon come in, and she's like, hey, here's how you have a great foundation. Let me tweak a couple things. Here's some strategies you can use. And hey, by the way, you don't have to teach content until November. Like, it's okay. Like, she had that mindset of like, no matter what, the relationships come first and content will be second. Like, you're saving time by implementing those positive systems right now. You're going to make it up later. So don't worry about the content. So having her there really helped me. But that's something I wish I knew, that like I had been able to practice during student teaching and throughout my college experiences.
And that's one thing, Hunter, that resonates with me so much, because not only that, but I mean, like Josh Tovar and Ryan Scott, great leaders also. It's always, it's connections before content. And even through my through my own learning experience, when I first became a teacher, coming out of marketing, pretty much that's the business that I was in, and coming in to teach math, I always came in with the mentality of, these are my customers. I have 30 customers that I have to sell algebra to. Not everybody's going to buy the subject the same way, but I have to build those relationships with them. And I love that you said, sometimes the return on investment, and that's something that has always, up until this day with anything, the return on investment is great when you establish those relationships in the very beginning on the get-go, because it'll make things a lot smoother as you go along, because the students will know you're real, you're genuine, that you really care about them. It's building up that culture. And then, just like Josh Tovar says here, kids do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So,
absolutely.
And then he also says here, as Principal Caffelli says, you can't fake the funk with the kids, because they know. And
they know.
And Amanda here joining in says, the culture and climate of your classroom will make or break you. So most definitely. So I'm glad, that you did have that awesome mentor there to tell you, like, hey, just take time and get to know them, build that culture. And I think, it wasn't till I moved from high school to elementary that I really learned that a little bit more now, because now I had my students all day long. So it was just like, man, you're there with them, you're building those relationships, and, they see you vulnerable, like, but it's okay. They, sometimes, because, sometimes they throw me off, and I was like, well, I don't know that, but let's find out together. And, those moments, and then they trust you, and then you go right along with them in that journey. And I love that. So that's great advice, my man. That's awesome. So how has it been now, your third year? What are some of those first year things that you have already seen and said, okay, now I'm a little bit more experienced? What are some things that you yourself, upon reflecting, are you seeing that it's like, man, all right, I'm nailing this, I'm doing well here?
Well, nailing it might be a stretch. I'm still learning so much, and we're all lifelong learners. So
yeah,
first year was just getting my feet wet, figuring out, what are you teaching? How are you going to handle these kids? Right. Very basic, like just trying to get through. Right. Second year for me was all about clarity. How can I add clarity to what I am doing every single day? And that was a huge lesson that Shannon taught me, was clarity is like clear as kind. And if you're not clear on what you're asking kids to do, then how on earth do we expect them to be successful? So it really was me practicing, okay, am I really doing this task for any specific reason? Or am I just doing it to fill time? And if I'm not clear on why I'm doing it, then that's not really kind to the students. I need to figure something else out. So I think that was year 2. I think year 3 for me is figuring out, okay, I really know what lessons I'm teaching. I'm a lot more confident in my curriculum. I know how to be clear. Now, how can I shift it onto the students? How do I get out in front, away from the front of the classroom, and how do I shift the thinking onto the kids? And so many teachers are like this, and I will be the first one to raise my hand and say, hey, I love helping kids. So sometimes I answer their questions for them, and that is a problem. The kids, the people that are doing the thinking are doing the learning, and that's my goal right now, is how am I shifting the thinking onto them, even if they're struggling through it. And obviously that student autonomy piece is really, really challenging. There's so many things you have to do to prepare them for that. You have to have, effective systems and routines. You have to talk them through about how to handle productive struggle. You have to have that respect level, right? Because if they don't trust that you're going to be there for them and they fail, then that's going to completely make them shut down. And so that's been a big process for me this year, is yes, putting all the curriculum pieces together to make it really exciting and engaging and meaningful. But also how do I get the kids to just do more of the thinking? So they should be the ones tired leaving school each day. And I should be yeah, let's do 8 more classes. Let's go. Because I've done all the work ahead of time. They're the ones doing the work during the day. So
Yeah. And I love
Mhm.
that, and I think that's so important. And it wasn't, like I said, coming from high school down to elementary, those are some of the things that I kind of just learned and naturally just, I don't know, it was just something that was just very natural to say,
Mhm.
okay, let me be the guide on the side. Like, I don't want to be up here lecturing the whole time. And then, so then that's when I started just, at that time, Chromebooks and all this were barely coming out. And I said, all right,
Mhm.
I'm going to use all of this. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to use all of this. And then I just put it into the students' hands, would do my lessons. And I was like, all right, guys, we're going to create a project. I want you guys to work in groups. You're going to create either a film, you're going to create some slides, you're going to do this, Screencastify. You're going to just, I just put it all in their hands. And it was just something that is amazing, because I think a lot of times as teachers, it's like, oh no, that just spent, it's too much time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. But I learned that, hey, you know what? With all of this that I'm doing, I can bundle so much within one lesson, and they're hitting so many different things. But at the end of this, they have a learning artifact that they're turning in, where I can
Mhm.
see visibly that they did understand the content, and they're not just memorizing the content. They're putting it into practice, whether it's through a slide presentation. Some students, they love to go and present. Other students didn't like to present. They would record. So
Mhm.
we have so many wonderful tools now that we can put in the students' hands, where they can create content and take ownership of their learning. And sometimes it's just hard for teachers to kind of step aside and be that
Yeah.
guide on the side, don't you think?
Right. They have teachers like we feel like we got to be in control of everything, but we don't. It's exhausting that way. Don't do that. And to mention the ed tech tools, like for me, it's all about what's going to help this kid the best. Like, how can they show me their mastery of learning? At the end of the day, I don't care what it looks like. I just need it in my hands somehow. So if that means go record a Flipgrid and do a little interview with yourself on lunar phases, great, do that. If you're a person that wants to do Google Drawing, awesome, here you go. Oh, PDF, great. Fill it out on Kami, awesome. Oh, pencil paper, that's cool too. Like, as long as you show me mastery, I don't care. Whatever your strengths are, use them. And I would also argue that, like, yeah, it takes a little bit of time to teach the kids how to do it at first, but once you've taught them, it's like they're good to go. It's like teaching a man to fish. Like, would you rather try and catch the fish for them and wear yourself out, or would you rather just give them a pole and help them along, like help teach them how to fish, because they need to learn. And once they have that tool, then they start suggesting to other classes, oh, hey, can I just do this on Flipgrid real quick? Sure, why not? Like, they just feel so much more confident, and like they have the ability to show mastery of learning instead of just being cut and dry one way.
Yes, I agree with you. And I'm going to just share a little anecdote. One of my courses that I took, our professor took everybody by surprise when
Mm.
she said, okay, guys, well, this semester I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to give you guys a choice board. You should have seen like eyes open up like deer in headlights, where people were like, some of my peers in there were like, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand. She's like, oh yeah, you can do this or this or this or this. And this is the way that I'm going to grade that you showed mastery of what we're doing and the expectations of the class. And they kept that. I'm not sure I quite follow. And she's like, well, you can do either this or this or this or that. And, but you should have seen the faces. And we were there for like about 30 minutes, and people were like, they were still, they didn't understand. And here I am. I was like, I raised my hand, through Zoom, and she's like, yeah, Alfonso, go ahead. I said, well, I only see 4 options, but can I do a podcast for my project? She's like, yeah, go ahead, do a podcast for your project. I was like, all right, I'm set. I'm good. You guys can pick anything else. But that was so wonderful. And I think that just kind of shared with me kind of like our education system, of where we have ingrained it's either A, B, C, D, or E, or A, B, C, D. And that's it. Or the teacher just telling the student what to do. And if there's no one there to tell you how to do it, there's confusion. There's like, well, what do you mean? I'm still not following, and so on. And so it's so important, like you said, show them the tool, but and they'll pick the tool that's most effective for them. And as
Yeah.
long as they show mastery, hey, you're good to go.
Yeah. And so many teachers out, I just want to comment real quick. Like, you mentioned the multiple choice option, and so many times teachers are only offering the A option that doesn't diversify like language needs, that is in size 9 font that people can't read, that has so much vocabulary that people don't understand. Like it's like off of someone else's website that you've never even like vetted. It's just a free resource. And like, we really have to be critical of what we're asking like our students to do and what we're offering them. And if it's not something that we're willing to do ourselves, then why would we ask our students to do it? Like, I would just really challenge people on that. If you're really confident in the assessment that you're providing, if you truly feel like it's tiered to show different levels of mastery and you feel like you're able to differentiate it, awesome. But so many people are just stuck in like, oh, this is easy. Download it off of a website. Here you go. But really, it's just, we have to offer tools to kids to show their learning, to show it in different ways. But I'd also put some of that effort onto the teachers too. What are we truly asking them to do? But like with your professor situation, like once you taught you and your peers how to pick from a choice board, they probably really appreciated it afterwards, right? But they would have never known until they had that option.
Yeah, because up until then, it was always like, well, this is what you're going to need to do, and this is what your paper's going to look like, and this is what you're going to read, and so on. And then with her, it's like, bam, you've got 4 things you can do, any combination of, and go for it. That's it.
Wait, I have autonomy over what I can do?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that was more of that shock of like, I don't get it. You mean I can pick and choose? And then of course there's that one kid in the back, me. Well, you don't have this option. Can we add that? So I was like, okay, why not ask? If that's what works for me and it's still going to give her what she needs, why not?
Why not?
Right. I like what Josh said here. Speaking of this topic, Josh Tovar says, academic factory style learners. Now, this isn't the first time that I hear something like this. Josh brought it up, but I had Micah Shippey a couple of months back, and he's saying, if you think about our education system, it's very industrial-like, where you have a bell that'll tell you when to start, a bell to break for lunch, then you have a bell to end the day, and you're lined up in rows for the most part. A lot of classrooms lined up in rows, and it's very factory style, in that sense. So, but now I think we're seeing, obviously, a lot of younger teachers or even teachers, that are seasoned teachers that are seeing like, hey, kind of need to shake things up a bit. We kind of, and those are those teachers that are willing to look into or look for that help, whether it's being connected through social media, listening to podcasts, hearing things from friends, and so on. So I want to ask you, Hunter, how has it helped you in your practice to be a connected educator, either through your podcast and just in how you share through social media as well?
Oh my goodness. I can't say enough about being a connected educator. It has changed my life. But I will say that you have to make the conscious choice to do it. Like, you can't just expect as a fresh first-year teacher for these magical coaches, this magical curriculum, these magical strategies to just fall out of thin air and land in your classroom. You have to be the person driving that learning yourself and trying to go out and connect with people. But once you do, oh my goodness, the amount of wisdom, the amount of people, the kindness, the generosity people offer. I know we were talking a little bit before about it. It's incredible. It's almost overwhelming, like the amount of people that are willing to help. Like if you're willing to ask a question, but you have to be willing to go out and do it. And so for me, being all those conversations with my parents, seeing the dark side of education and being like, yeah, I want to fix it. I want to change it. I had all these questions, just all these burning questions. And that's really what drove me to start Ed Essentials. My education platform is, I started blogging my student teaching experiences just a little bit. I did like 4 or 5 articles, and then I was like, dang, writing kind of takes up a lot of time. I'd rather just talk to people. And so podcast kind of grew from there. And now I do the Ed Essentials podcast, where I reach out to those people, and people ask, oh my gosh, how'd you get Dr. John Hattie? How'd you get Rick Wormley? How'd you get Todd Whitaker? And it's like, I just asked. I reached out to them. John Hattie was chilling out in his beach home, over COVID, because they were quarantining, and Todd Whitaker messaged me back on Instagram. And you just have to ask people, because people in education are the kindest people. They want to help you. If you're genuine about it, if you are truly in need, there will always be someone that can answer your question and help you. That's why I have a tough time with people who say, well, I don't know, I just give up, or, well, this is too hard, I don't really know what to do, so whatever. And they kind of just give up. I'm like, have you been on Twitter? Have you been on Instagram? Go do a Twitter chat. Go search up Alfonso on Instagram, or find his podcast. And like, if you need resources, it's out there. And maybe you've tried, but you're just not looking in the right places. And so like, once you become a connected educator, man, I can't even imagine my life without it. I would be drowning. And at like a base level, being a connected educator just makes you feel like you're normal, and you have some people that are going through the same thing you're going through, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's indifferent. Teaching is, it's a community. It takes a communal effort. And like, if you don't have that community, teaching is really hard. It just really is. But being able to say, hey, you know, have you experienced this before? You know, my student did this today. Have you ever had any strategies to deal with that? Yes, I have. Oh my gosh, thank God. I thought I was going crazy. Like, those conversations just keep you moving forward and keep your energy levels high, because it's so easy to run out of positivity lately.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And like you said, you know, right now we're getting a lot of love from the comments. We've got Josh, you know, who's following you. We've got Mel also, who says, hey, you know what? Don't be afraid and ask all the questions. And I know Mel, you know, and I got introduced to her, you know, as far as during COVID and all that. And Mel is just a wonderful educator. And I think what has helped her, and I've seen just the amount of people that she connects with, is like, much like you and myself, it's like, hey, if we need to find an answer, we're going to go straight to the source, and we're going to find out, and we're going to ask, and so on. And like I said, you know, when people have those reactions and say, oh, you've had them, or you know them, I was like, yeah, because I've had questions and I go straight to the source. There's no reason to do so, to not, you know, find answers. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to connect with people. And that's something that we were talking about a little bit earlier in the warm-up chat. You know, there are still teachers that work in silos. There are still teachers that are just cooped up. They it's just using the same things, same resources. They don't want to share anything. They don't want to connect with anybody. They just do the same thing that they've been doing. And I often made a comment. I spoke to a teacher once, and you know, just had a conversation in passing, and you know, she said, well, you know, I've been teaching for 25 years and this and that. And I said, have you been teaching for 25 years, or have you been teaching the same lesson for 25 years? And she kind of just, you know, almost fell back in her, you know, because it kind of hit her. And then after that, you know, she became my best friend, and, you know, we've been good, you know, but even then I've seen her grow, where she was like, you know what, I never thought anybody could ever teach me anything, but you have. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And that's kind of like, it's a mindset. So Hunter, I mean, am I right? Don't you think it's like that growth mindset as opposed to that fixed mindset?
That resonates super, super well with me. Like, even today we had a team meeting and didn't go great. There were some negative things that were being said, and, you know, stemming from a mindset of, well, this is super hard. I'm not willing to find answers about it, so I guess I'm just stuck with the problem. And we have a lot of teachers that, and you know what? Partially, yes, it's on her, but I also blame some of the things that we're being told as educators. Like, you know what? Education's tough. You just do the best you can, close your door, right? With that sort of mindset, yeah, I understand the meaning behind that, but that doesn't mean close your door off from visiting other teachers. That doesn't mean close your door off from learning lessons from others. That doesn't mean close your door off from being willing to find the answer no matter what, because it's what's best for kids. So that's part of it. I mean, the growth mindset's really difficult to have unless you are surrounded by people that also have that growth mindset. Like, you're sort of the sum of the average people, you know, what's the saying, this, you're the average of the five people you surround yourself most with. So, you know, I'd suggest first year teachers, I know I've done podcasts on this before, but even just any educator, you really have to be intentional about who you spend your time with. And last year I was like, man, like, there are a few teachers I hang out with a lot and they're great. There are some that I spend too much time with. And it's not because they're bad people. It's just, they're complaining about kids, the way they talk about kids. That's not for me. So I've had to make really tangible and really tactical choices to figure out, okay, who am I really going to spend my time with? Because I want that energy feeding into me. And it's really made a difference this year. But unless you're really self-aware of those things, it's really hard to get out of that fixed mindset unless you have those people.
Yeah. And that's so important. You know, when you surround yourself with others, I mean, even today, you know, I working with my friend Isaac, I mean, he's my colleague now. And, you know, I've known him for as long as I've worked there in our district, and now we work together. And it was just so great. We're just like back and forth on getting ideas for a makerspace project that we're working on and so on, and just being able to toss those ideas around. And then we have Jennifer, who is what the secretary to, or an assistant to the assistant superintendent, and she's there. And then she's like, man, like listening to you guys, just like, man, you guys are like just like in the zone and everything. It's like, yeah, and because it's like when you work with like-minded individuals that have that same vision or the same passion or see that change, I mean, man, it really makes your work environment so much better, you know, and that's wonderful.
And to connect to what you were saying too earlier, like yes, you might be siloed at your school because you have to be in order to survive, because there is so much negativity, but your professional learning network can be people on Instagram, people through podcasts, on Twitter. Like that can become your space. So don't let your environment dictate you and your mindset. You have like the most power available to you at your fingertips, but you've got to be willing to go out and look it up and find it.
Yeah. So. No, well said. Now, going back into that, Hunter, like, so I know you said you started writing a little bit of blogs and started putting stuff out there. What inspired you to do that in the first place?
That's a great question. I think the big thing was similar to sort of what was driving me from seeing the sort of negative side of education with my parents. Like I wanted to mark down ways and record ways that I felt like there could be change in education, right? And changing, it could be little things. You know, one of the articles I wrote about was why we should let kids listen to music and not yell at them for taking their headphones out. Like just a little mindset shift of how you treat a kid can make all the difference in a classroom. And that can make the long-term difference for the relationship between you and that child. So mainly it was because I wanted to remember, like, okay, this is a really important lesson that I either observed or that I kind of experienced myself. I want to remember that so that when I go into the classroom and I'm like drowning, I can go back to this and fall back on this, and that my philosophy and my core of who I am as an educator stays true. Because as you know, like we were mentioning the idea of mentors earlier, it's not always sunshine and roses. There might be teachers out there that start to influence you. Like even when I was student teaching in that 5th grade room, I felt myself kind of changing a little bit. I'm like, oh man, like I'm becoming a little bit negative. What's going on? And I had to really, like, I think the writing really helped me reflect and step back and say, okay, what am I really learning from this? And what is the right way? So that's kind of where it started for me. And now it's just sort of turned into podcasts of, okay, who can I find that is an absolute expert in this area, who is making amazing change? And how can I ask really meaningful questions to that person? And how can I, as a 3rd-year teacher, speed up the process so I'm not spending all this time learning, going through the trial and error process? How can I take what they've done for years and learn from it immediately and speed up the process of becoming more effective more quickly?
Oh, no. And I agree with you on that. I mean, I think very similar to what you just said is pretty much that's the reason that I started putting some stuff out there. And then now that it was more meaningful and tying it more to my career and tying it more to my schooling and so on, those connections that I've been able to make. And the same thing with the podcasting, to be able to bring in the people that are doing some amazing things. And oftentimes, you know, there's some people that are doing some wonderful things that are out there that, you know, haven't had an opportunity to have a platform to, you know, amplify their voice and their work and so on. And I love making those connections because I know that I'm going to learn something from them too as well. And just as you, like with the amazing powerhouse guests that you've had. And I love that idea because I'm on that similar track that every person that I bring on is somebody that I see that is doing something meaningful and is doing something great. And I want a little bit of that awesome sauce too as well, so I can sprinkle into my practice. So I'm definitely learning a lot from you today, Hunter. And obviously,
I appreciate that.
And with everything that you put out on social media too as well, you know, it's just been great. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to connect with you. And you know, this is really the first time that you and I even chat or talk. And it's just like, man, we can go on for hours. So that's great.
I know I got like lesson planning to do. I've got grading to do. I'm so ready though, Alfonso. Like you have hyped me up. You've got me ready. Like, let's do this. Like I said, bottle that up so I can have that every class period, and I'll be set. I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Hunter, let's talk to our share with our audience too, you know, a little bit more about your podcasting as well. Sure. Give us a little bit more info on the show and, you know, as far as the guests. I know we talked a little bit about that, but well, first of all, too, I want to ask, did your podcast start or, you know, during pandemic as well?
So I can't even remember when the podcast really started. It started way back when it was originally called Schools of Thought. And I
Okay.
started with an assistant principal. And as he just got busier with life and I kind of got busier, we sort of, he went his own way. I went my own way. And I said, hey, I'm really thinking about rebranding it. I think there's another podcast sort of with a similar name. So I was like, you know what? We'll just call it the Ed Essentials Podcast. And he was cool with it. But I think it started, 2 years ago. I can't remember if it was during
Okay.
COVID, but I just had this idea of equipping educators through the stories and insights, right? There are so many stories. And like you said, there are so many teachers that don't have the platform that are doing amazing things. It's like if more people could just learn from the best teacher in their school, we'd be like education would be fixed. Like we wouldn't have all these problems. So how can we make the information more readily available? And for me, like I just wanted to learn. I really did. Like I wanted the answers from the best people possible because I want to have the same impact on kids. It's really not about like getting likes or getting views or listens or anything like that. It's more about what am I learning from this person and how can they influence me and my philosophy and my teaching and my pedagogy to impact kids. And when you know this, being on social media, there are all kinds of people that ask things from you. It's like, oh, can I be a guest on your podcast? Or, like I'm not really about that. I'm just about like, as I go through my educational journey, what are those natural questions that I'm coming up with, those natural things that I'm like, oh man, I haven't really thought about a solution to that. Okay, who would be a great person to answer that? And I do research and I find people. And I've just been lucky enough to have a lot of people be really generous with their time. But, so it's called the Ed Essentials Podcast. It's available on all kinds of platforms. You name it, it's probably on there. I try to do episodes at least once a month. It used to be weekly with mentor teaching and master's classes on the weekends. Obviously, the podcast takes a bit of a backseat. So I'm sorry, Josh. He's one of my most avid listeners, but I try to do it just when it feels right. I don't try to put things out there that I don't really think that I put a lot of thought into. So it's more meaningful for me that way.
Yeah, no, and that's wonderful. And that's what I love too. And in the similar situation too, is like a lot of times it's like, man, I just get so excited about topics and it really is just me. Like I just get really excited about learning and so on. And I just want to get people on to share because I want to learn about that right then and there. And usually what it'll do is I guarantee you, like after this conversation, that like probably tomorrow there'll be a blog post up and everything because it helps me reflect and what I've learned and the takeaways and so on, just to continue sharing. But very similar to you, I find those questions, those problems, and then I'm like, hey, I'm going to find those people that have those solutions and let's have a conversation and see what else we can learn. And I mean, nowadays, like social media is so powerful. So it's
powerful.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right. So Amanda says like, hey man, like tomorrow's Friday, lesson planning can wait.
Unfortunately, Amanda, lessons need to be planned. I apologize. The kids need it.
Yeah. All right, Hunter. Well, we're going to start kind of wrapping up here, but these are some of the questions that I love to do, at the tail end of the show. And so let me ask you something for yourself. What are some things that you love to do just to kind of get out of your head and just kind of disconnect?
Ooh, I mean, walking my dog is the biggest thing. Time is such a struggle for so many teachers. And so I've really focused on when I'm walking my dog, even if it's for like 10 to 30 minutes, however long, it doesn't matter. Like that time is sort of sacred time now. I always used to listen to podcasts and stuff on my walks, and I try not to anymore, just to truly disconnect and just reflect on my day. So that's one thing. I also do just really like being outdoors. So, my dad's a big hunter and fisherman, outdoorsman. And so anytime I can fish or be out in the woods, just where there's literally no cell service, I can just be sitting there freezing my butt off, but it's great because I've got nature all around me. Like those moments I'm learning as I'm growing in this profession that like I'm valuing those more. So just connecting that way. And also just sometimes going into, being a hermit and watching Netflix for like an hour or two, or on the weekend, just taking a Saturday off. Like I'm a terrible workaholic. And so any time where I'm just not doing schoolwork is probably good for me.
Perfect. That's wonderful. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes you do need to disconnect and just veg out. My thing is like for my downtime, like my wife and I will just get on Netflix and we'll watch like cooking shows and like the Great British Bake Off and things like that. We're into that. And then now that the Christmas season is here and everything, we're probably going to start binging on some Christmas movies and things of that sort. So you definitely need that time to just really disconnect and recharge and just kind of set all that aside. So what are some ways too? I want to know how you yourself continue to grow professionally and seek professional development. Does your district offer professional development for you, or a lot of it is through reaching out to people on social media? What are some ways that you help yourself develop professionally?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. So we do professional development every Wednesday, but it's sort of led by a variety of people. And so what I've been trying to do as a mentor teacher and as a building leadership team member is just inserting myself more, like where things need to be done. I'm trying to ask, hey, can I do that? Right. So like part of the things we've done this year is establishing a behavior tracking system for our entire school. Like that's something like just trying to take on projects so I can challenge myself, but also feel like I'm more connected to what my school is doing. That's been really powerful. Even if it's just something small, like, hey, can you format this sheet so it works better? Great. I will do that. So that's one way. Asking questions to the right people within my school has also been another. So like even today, for instance, I talked to one of the master teachers, basically an instructional coach. And I was like, hey, you know what, Katie, I just really need you to come into my 8th hour. It was rough yesterday and I really don't know what was going on. Maybe it was me, but I just need you to I need a fresh pair of eyes on this classroom. And she came in today. I'm sure she'll have great feedback for me tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Just being willing to open my classroom up to people, but then asking questions to my other mentor teachers, master teachers, my admin, right? Asking them, hey, when you make this decision, how'd you do that? Or why, what was your thinking? But then of course the podcast, reaching out to guests, trying to get those extra burning questions answered and connecting with people like yourself. It's what drives me forward and keeps me positive about education.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, here's another question for you. What would you say is your edu-kryptonite?
Oh man. My edu-kryptonite, like what drives me nuts as a teacher or okay.
Yes, sir.
Man. Well, lately it's been these tech decks. Oh my gosh. These skateboards where they're just flipping them with their fingers. That is like, I keep saying, okay, park them in the garage. They're like, Mr. Flesh, you don't have a garage built. I was like, great. So now we got to build a garage together. So that's actually, thanks for the reminder. That's going to be something we do tomorrow.
There you go.
is build a garage for each period so they can set their skateboards in there. Oh my goodness. I think my edu-kryptonite doesn't really have anything to do with kids. It has more so to do with like how I respond. I find most times when I'm frustrated or I'm feeling really negative, it's because I wasn't focusing as much on the positive in the first place. And so they still have those. Yeah, they're all the rage now, Mel. Yeah, I know it's insane. But I think, like yesterday, for instance, I was tired. I don't know what it was, but I just did not feel like my normal self. And my friends will tell you, like, I'm one of the most positive people alive. And for me, if I'm not feeling positive, then my kids kind of feel that too. And so today, for my 8th hour, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I feel like I was kind of shouting and I feel like I was probably embarrassing some kids, not by choice, but just out of pure frustration. And I'm really sorry. And 99% of the time, those kids have said, you know what, Mr. Flesh, dude, you're fine. Like they kind of deserved it, or like we need to be the ones to fix our behavior. And like that's another lesson, just being willing to apologize and being willing to be vulnerable with your kids that's so empowering to yourself, and it's empowering to them to see you be who you are and not try and act like a robot. I mean, every kid wants to know who their teacher is and what they're really like. So
yeah. No, and I think that is so important. And I love that you said that, being vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to, just have your students see you as a human. You are a human. They are human too as well. And just see those things. And, but it's also important just, for them to grow as well. And just to be able to see those things, that even if it happens to them too, we're going to be there for them. And so, yeah, that's wonderful. And Amanda said here, the shoe holder over the door with the pockets, that could be their tech deck holder too as well. So you can do
Okay,
that.
Amanda, I'm gonna have to message you more about that.
So she's got that going on. All right, Hunter. So final two questions as we start wrapping up here is, if you can have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Oh man, anything on it. It doesn't have to be education related.
It can be anything.
We're going to make it education related. The first thing that came into mind was be kind to kids. At the end of the day, you're here for the kids. You're not going to have fun as a teacher if you're the one being mean all the time. Yes, that also means set high expectations, but also treat them with kindness. Kids do the best they know how. So if they're not doing what you're expecting them to do, teach them. Sometimes it's simple. Like, it's simple, but it's not always easy. That's what Todd Whitaker always says. It's simple, but it's not easy. If they don't know how to use Flipgrid because they've never been taught it before, teach them. If they don't know how to sit in their seats properly, teach them, because like they just need to learn how. And we assume too much that they should already know how, especially at the middle school level. We assume, oh, well, they should have learned this in elementary school. Like you're 12, 13 years old now, as if they're like true adults. And it's just like, come on, be kind to kids, assume positive intent, teach them if they need it. And then after the fact, like, yeah, if you're still not sitting in your seat, okay, I kind of taught you already, so we can have a conversation about that. But at the end of the day, you got to be kind to kids.
Excellent. Wonderful. I love that. And big shout out to Tim Cavey. Tim Cavey joining us. So I love the Teachers on Fire,
Teachers
his
on
billboard,
Fire.
Create over consume.
Ooh,
love that.
Love that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim,
That's
for stopping
powerful.
by. Appreciate you, my friend. And Hunter, last question before we wrap up. If you and I were to switch roles and this was your show and I was your guest, what would be one question you'd like to ask me?
Oh, I could ask one question. Okay, I'll ask you the question I ask in my podcast. If you could recreate the education system from scratch, okay, if you could recreate it all and you only could offer this guiding force of people that are recreating the system three guiding pieces of feedback, what three statements would you provide them?
Ooh, you got me good there. Okay, so I'm reinventing three pieces of feedback that I would give them.
Like, they're building the perfect school.
Mm-hmm.
Give them three pieces of advice. What should they do?
Now, just not to the infrastructure, but you mean just like
it could be infrastructure, it could be policy, it could be philosophy. You take it how you want it.
All right.
That's the best part.
All right. So the way that I would do that, it would probably be relationships. Number one, the most important thing would be relationships, not only with students, but with parents. It's important that we reach out to our parent community. And oftentimes when you hear the word learning community, I feel that parents are not included in that. So my biggest thing is making parents feel welcome, connecting with them, because there's often times where parents can come in and they don't feel welcome at a campus. And that is not the way it's supposed to be. These parents are trusting their kids with our teachers in our district. So for me is meet them where they're at. If the parents can't come, go out there and meet them where they are at. So number one, relationships with parents. Number two, I would say do not focus on, I guess I don't want to say assessments. I mean, I know we need to do that, but don't take it for a grain of salt. To me, it's better to equip the child to be able to be a successful adult and be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and be able to do those things. So we need to make sure that we share those skills with them rather than them just grow up and just A, B, C, D, or waiting for somebody to tell me what to do. So it's important that we develop those skills. So data does not determine what that child is going to do. So stop that already. And then for me is also UDL. What's good for one is good for all, which means, for example, if I have students that require a certain support, don't just offer it for that one student, or don't just say, oh, well, that's the special ed's, department that they need to take care of it. No. As a teacher, you're that first tier of support. It's offer it to them, but make it available to all, because you never know. You can't say that just because this learner is more advanced, may not need that support. One day they may come in and say, hey, you know what? I prefer to listen to the reading rather than read it through a book. I'd rather listen to it. So we need to offer that choice in that learning, but making the supports available to all. So I think right off the top of my head, those are the three things that I would select.
Powerful. You should be running a school. Let's get it happening.
Hey, you never know. I'm working on that, so we'll see.
Exactly. I know you are.
We're working on that. But yeah, those are the three things that I would do. And thank you so much for asking me that. That really got that out of me. And now that's probably going to be a blog post that'll be coming up too as well. So for sure.
Well, I love that. I love that. I appreciate you asking those questions.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you, Hunter, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know we've connected on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, maybe. I love the work that you're doing. I love, your guests that you've brought on. Your podcast is definitely great. I've been sharing your link tree here in our chat. And of course, all that information will be, on the episode and show notes and so on. So guys, make sure you connect with Hunter. He's doing some amazing things. And don't be afraid to reach out. If you have any questions for Hunter, anything going on, that you might have learned from his experience or anything that he can help you with, reach out to him, reach out to me. And I know Hunter and I would probably be on the same wavelength that if we don't have the answer, we'll definitely connect you with somebody that has the right answer for sure.
I was just about to say that. We will find an answer for you. We will make it our responsibility.
Yes, for sure. Because that's what we do. And those are the type of educators that we are, guys. So Hunter, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Thank you so much to Mel. Thank you so much, Josh, Amanda, Tim Cavey. Thank you guys. As always, those of you that are watching, those of you that are going to be rewatching or re-listening, thank you so much for your support and for making My EdTech Life what it is today. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have that. Well, even if it was, we'd still be doing the show, but we really appreciate your feedback, guys, honestly. And thank you so much for your support as we're coming up to our 100th episode. I'm so excited. I think that somebody said that that's a big milestone in the podcast world. So I'm excited about that 100th episode. But we couldn't we couldn't do it without you. And this is my passion. This is my passion project, connecting educators, creators, one show at a time. So thank you so much. Visit our website, myedtech.life. Check out all our episodes. Give us a review. Drop us a line. Get some merch. Support the show. Just send me a DM. Just, hey, I love to hear from you guys. So we've got some great shows this Saturday. We've got Ryan Scott, who's going to be joining us this Saturday morning. So we've got another education leader that'll be showing up. And we've got our special 100th episode. I'm so excited. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but it is a big, I'm excited. It's a huge guest, and you guys are definitely going to enjoy it. And that'll be December 4th. So make sure that you are available and set your times for 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for that 100th episode, because it's coming and it's going to be awesome. So thank you guys so much. All right, guys. So this is me signing off. We'll see you this coming Saturday. But until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie. Y'all take care and have a wonderful evening.